How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 2 of What If Manga Deku Went Back in Time. And now, before we begin, I would just like to ask you all to please put your what if suggestions down in the comments section below. And now, let's begin. Bakugo, this really just isn't the time for us to be fighting right now. And besides, we're probably going to be sparring at least 1,000 other times this year. This is a hero school after all. Why would I fight you now when we're obviously going to fight later on? Plus, if you get hurt, I'm gonna be the one getting in trouble because you're the one hurt. It just doesn't make any sense. See you later, Bakugo. Izuku would say as Bakugo would only clench his fists in anger, rushing up to Izuku before placing his hand onto Izuku's shoulder, gripping it tightly. You're not going anywhere until I beat you. Izuku would turn his head, looking straight on at Bakugo's eyes, glaring at him as Bakugo would recoil. I told you, Bakugo, I'm not going to fight you. It's pointless right now, Izuku would say before walking off. As Bakugo would be standing there clenching his fists tighter and tighter that his nails were digging into his skin, causing the palms of his hand to start bleeding. As Izuku would continue off, just walking off, as Bakugo would just find him to just be gone, having disappeared into the distance, as he would go off to walk back to his house. 2 weeks later, we see Izuku sitting in class just staring on at the blank chalkboard in front of him. All of a sudden, however, the room starts to shake as Izuku looks down onto the ground, placing his bare hand right on it as he feels the entire building shaking. As all of a sudden, there, All Might sprinting down the hall would break into the Class 1A classroom, sending the boards and timbers of the doors splattering everywhere as all of the students would stare on, just whoa, it's the number one hero, many of them would say, barely being able to talk as their entire body would start shaking. They've never seen All Might in person before, and there stood in front of them in all of his glory was the number one hero, All Might. So all of them would be staring there. All Might would give out a laugh. Yeah, All Might here, and I'm your new hero teacher. So, why don't we begin? You all can't be heroes without hero costumes, can you? All Might would say in a strong voice, clicking down on a red button. As all of a sudden, out of the corner of everyone's eye, they see a compartment start to open up out of the wall. As there, just a bunch of suitcases would slowly roll out of the wall. Many of the students would rush over, grabbing their suitcase, looking at it, as they would then realize, wait, you really mean we already have our hero costumes? We just put in the designs yesterday! Well, thankfully the support course went to work last night. They all managed to make them all quite quickly. I mean, these are just the prototype versions of them, though. You all know you can just modify them whenever you want. However, you're not going to be doing that in class time. You'd have to go after hours right to the support course classroom. As All Might would be saying that, you would and tell everyone to go down to the locker rooms, get changed, and then head off to City Site C, as they are going to basically be doing their first ever hero assignment. As all of them with such excitement and glee, they would rush down to the locker room, getting changed into their hero costumes before rushing back to wherever All Might said them to go. As many of them would be looking at all of their hero costumes, just wondering, whoa, that's your hero costume? That's quite cool. They would just be pointing out each other's hero costumes, complimenting them, saying how nice they looked or if it was stupid or ugly or not. So once all of the students would get down to wherever All Might told them to go, they would all just be sitting there waiting for the directions of the shining golden hero standing in front of them. Alright, let's begin with a 2-team assignment. One team, heroes, and the other team, villains. So, these 2 teams will be teams of 2. 2 heroes, 2 villains. Villains will be deciding or hiding wherever they hide this device. Thanks to and supplied by the support course, once again, big thanks to them. and the heroes will have 15 minutes to capture both of the villains or touch the device, therefore deactivating it. However, the villains can win by capturing both of the heroes or drawing out that time limit, causing for the heroes not to be able to capture them or touch the device in the 15-minute limit. So, why don't we begin with the name draw? Bakugo Katsuki and Tenya Ida versus Uchaku Uraraka and Izuku Midoriya. Izuku's team will be the heroes, and Bakugo's team will be the villains. Bakugo, why don't you go ahead and go and set up the device? All Might would say as Bakugo would grab the device before going into the building, hiding it onto the top floor. As 5 minutes would pass, All Might would then give a signal for Izuku's team, the heroes, to step into the building. As they would walk in, they would all look around, wondering where the device was hidden. As Izuku, recollecting what had happened just 2 weeks before, and the first time he had dealt with such a scenario, he would know that Bakugo was most likely about to come around a corner. So as Izuku would continue on walking, right as he got to the second floor, he would stop. Izuku could sense that something was about to happen. Bakugo must be behind that corner that was right up in front of them. As Izuku would see this, he would start to make smoke all throughout the hallways, making it hard for him even to see. As Bakugo, seeing the smoke, would wonder what the hell was that. Izuku didn't have some sort of smoke quirk, did he? He just couldn't figure out anything right now. As Bakugo would walk through the smoke, all of a sudden, green lightning would start to spew out of Izuku. As Bakugo would stare on at this green lightning before realizing that Izuku was standing right in front of him. As Izuku with one punch would send air pressure flying throughout the room, hitting Bakugo right in the face. As all of the smoke would clear up, as Izuku now stood right over Bakugo, would punch him right across the face, as Izuku would then ask Uraraka to go up throughout the floors and find the device, while he took care of the hothead Bakugo. As Bakugo would jump up, launching himself towards Izuku, sending explosions flying in different directions, causing holes in the building walls to just start shattering the walls away. As Izuku's punches didn't help that either, as Bakugo would be punched, sending him flying into one of the walls, or Izuku would be sent flying backwards because of one of Bakugo's explosions. As this was happening, the second floor walls would start to slowly be eaten away, as finally only the support pillars would end up be standing, as every punch or explosion thrown would cause the entire building to end up shaking. As Uraraka, feeling this, would know not to enter the final floor, knowing that if this building were to topple over, she would easily be able to jump and grab the device, while Ito would most likely not be able to, not being able to use his quirk in the air. However, she didn't know if he could or not. She's just hoping that he can't. So with this fight still going on, Uraraka watching, all of the sudden, Izuku would punch Bakugo, sending him flying, slamming into one of the pillars. As one of the pillars would cause one of the corners of the building to start dipping down, as Bakugo would then launch himself forward, propelling himself off of another one of the pillars, breaking that as the entire other side of the building would start to collapse, as Izuku, seeing this, would destroy both of the pillars right next to him, as the entirety of the upper floors would start to cave down into the second floor. Izuku, knowing Bakugo's chance of survival was limited, he would flick his finger, causing air pressure to consume Bakugo, sending him flying into one of the buildings right next to this one. As the building would start to collapse, Uraraka, seeing this, would jump out, grabbing onto the device. As All Might would then come over the speaker, saying that the hero team had won. However, he would race off, seeing that the building was collapsing, trying to hopefully not have anyone injured. As Izuku would be buried under all of the rubble, he would then slowly climb himself out, or just get out of all of the rubble. As he would be standing there on top of everything, we'd end up seeing Uraraka and Ida under a thin just couple of bricks. Izuku would pick them both out of there before dragging them over to where All Might was, as he would end up meeting up with them before asking Izuku to take all three of them to go to Recovery Girl's office. As the ceiling had caved down onto them, even though Uraga had grabbed the device, the ceiling wasn't going to care at all. It's an inanimate object, so it would end up falling on top of both of them, making both of them just be stuck under rubble, which this wasn't the first time for Uraraka, meaning she's quite the experienced person to be buried alive. So as all of the rest of Izuku's classmates would end up going and taking the assignment, Izuku would be sitting in Recovery Girl's office, just hoping that all three of the people that were on Izuku's team or against Izuku's team were going to be okay. As Recovery Girl would tell Izuku that he can go home now, as it's already been the entirety of the day, and since Izuku's been waiting there since the start. They're most likely not going to wake up, as they had some pretty severe injuries that she had to heal, taking out a lot of their energy. Izuku would nod his head, signifying that, yeah, alright, I understand. Before going home, Izuku didn't want to hurt any of his classmates. Sure, some of them might be a little crazy than others, being Bakugo, but he really just couldn't care less if more like that. They're still his classmates, and so who cares if they're crazy or not? So after that, Izuku going home would end up telling his mother all about the day he had at school, as she would end up smiling, knowing that her son was most likely having fun at his hero school and was most likely going to become one of the best heroes of all time. At least that's just her mother's side talking, wanting Izuku to be the best that he possibly can be. And so after a couple more weeks of training, this and that, they would finally have their first field trip to a building far off of campus. Sure, it was on campus, but it was the farthest building away from the main building, miles away from it, and it was going to take a 30-minute drive to get there. Aizawa would slowly walk into the room before telling of them, "Alright, class, today we're going to be going on to a field trip. We're gonna be going to the USJ. Don't worry about your parents' permission. We already got all of that. So, just go down to the locker rooms, put your hero costumes on, and yeah, just get onto the bus, located on the bus bay, just right outside the locker rooms." All of the students would race off, going to get her hero costumes on, as Aizawa would already be seated on the bus by the time all of them got there. As the bus would then speed off towards the USJ, Izuku would walk over towards Aizawa and would tell him something. "Aizawa, I have a bad feeling about this USJ thing. Just, why don't you guys... Actually, I have a plan." "What do you mean, plan? You're not making any sense, Izuku," Aizawa would respond. "It's fine, Aizawa, trust me," Izuku would say, as the bus would slowly roll up to the USJ, as Izuku would end up walking in to the USJ along with the rest of their class, as 13 would end up showing all of them just the different types of zones from the top of the stairwell, as Izuku would danger sense, as he would know that the villains were coming already. Izuku would start to fill the entire USJ with smoke, as Aizawa would end up asking, "What are you doing? Why are you filling this entire place with smoke?" "Just trust me, Aizawa. Please take the rest of the class and leave right now." Aizawa would look on confused before being like, "Fine. Come on, class. I don't understand Izuku right now." 13 and Aizawa would both leave after a little bit of persuasion from Izuku. As Izuku would then flick with his finger, causing all of the smoke to dissipate, he would be the lone person standing up at the top of the staircase. As Shigaraki and a ton of other villains would then step out of this purple mysterious portal. "Hello, UA! We are the League of Villains, and we're coming here to end the #1 hero that is All Might," Shigaraki would say. However, once he would look up towards Izuku, he would end up just wondering, "Wait, you! Where's the rest of Class 1A? Shigaraki would demand, with where was All Might. However, Izuku would only shake his head. "Shigaraki, I'm here to end you, just like you came here to end All Might." Shigaraki, seeing this, would just say, "Go and kill that brat. I don't have enough time for this," Shigaraki would say, starting to scratch his neck in annoyance. As Shigaraki would then point out his hand, yelling for all of the villains to go attack them, or him, as the neck scratching would start to get even more violent, as he was just so irritated. Where's the rest of Class 1A? Where's All Might? This just doesn't make any sense. On the Class 1A schedule, it said they would all be here, not just one kid. All for One's gonna kill me after this. So with all of the villains charging up the stairs, Izuku, seeing this, would end up flicking right at the stairs, causing them to start to collapse, as all of the villains would start to fall on top of each other or fall back down onto the stairs. Injuring many of them, Izuku would then just jumping over to where Shigaraki was, going to punch him. However, the Nomu would be there to stop it. Since All Might never got injured in this what if, the Nomu is going to be a lot stronger. Right as the Nomu blocked Izuku's punch, a massive wind would end up flying right back behind it. Just how powerful Izuku's punch was. As in just diameter and area where Izuku's punch would have been, it was a massive dent in the USJ, a massive crater. So Nomu would stare down lifelessly towards Izuku. It would wind his hand back before punching Izuku square in the face, slamming his hand right into the cheek of Izuku, sending him flying backwards right into the stairwell. However, he would catch himself using his cork float. As Izuku would be staring on at the Nomu, just saying how the Nomu was a lot stronger. Guess that's what happens when you save All Might from getting injured. Izuku would breathe in before breathing out, calming himself down. As Izuku would end up using Black Whip, grabbing onto Shigaraki, pulling him closer towards him, using Black Whip just like Aizawa's scarf. However, the Nomu would see this, grabbing onto Shigaraki, holding his hands around him, making sure that Shigaraki wasn't going to go near Izuku. However, as Izuku started to pull tighter and tighter, Shigaraki would start to scream out in pain from how tight it was around his body. So Nomu would let go after being demanded to by Shigaraki. Shigaraki would be sent flying towards Izuku before being uppercut right by him and then jumping up, slamming him down onto the ground. However, the Nomu would be there catching Shigaraki before placing him back onto the ground, as Shigaraki, now mad, would stand up, yelling for the Nomu to kill this damn brat already, to stop toying with him. The Nomu would give off a screech in understandment before rushing off towards Izuku, pained that it had hurt his master. So as the Nomu would rush towards Izuku, it would throw many rapid punches right on at Izuku. However, Izuku continued on dodging them, going back and back until he was finally at a wall, where he would then jump up, floating in the air, or using One for All to fly around Nomu, punching him right in the back of the head, causing the Nomu to fall down to his knees, as Izuku then used Black Whip to grab onto the Nomu, throwing him up into the ceiling. So the Nomu would be thrown into the ceiling before slamming into the glass roof, as the Nomu would then start to fall back down, slamming into the ground, causing just a massive dust cloud to explode into the air. The Nomu would give off a screech in pain before rushing off at Izuku once more, sending massive amounts of punches right at him, this time faster than ever, all landing right onto Izuku. However, it just didn't seem like they did anything to him, as they were just far too weak. As Izuku, having enough of this, would then start to jump back and forth before winding back his fist and slamming it right into the Nomu's chest, completely obliterating the lower half of the Nomu. And before the Nomu could regenerate, Izuku would grab the brain of the Nomu, since the Nomu didn't have a skull covering that part, before ripping the brain out of the mindless husk that used to be a person. as the Nomu's body would fall down to the ground, now the regeneration no longer there. As Izuku would throw the brain onto the ground, as it would then flop down onto it. Shigaraki would look on in complete and utter shock that Izuku had managed to defeat the Nomu. However, Izuku would rush in, grabbing onto Kirogiri within an instant, pulling apart its metal parts, making sure that Kirogiri wasn't going to be able to use his portals, before rushing off towards Shigaraki, punching Shigaraki right across the face. However, before anything else could happen, all of a sudden the doors would end up being blown away, as there stood All Might, standing in all of his glory, before rushing down, grabbing Izuku, punching Shigaraki, as Izuku not being able to finish off Shigaraki, he would be able to get away with the recovered Kirogiri. So All Might would put down Izuku, yelling at him for how dangerous that was, while Izuku would only just grab his head in frustration. All Might, I was trying to defeat that damn villain. You don't understand what magnitude your decision just had. That's your decision right there. Probably just killed thousands of people. You don't understand it now, but you will later, Izuku says, as All Might would only look down at Izuku before grabbing onto his arm. You've got a lot of explaining to do, Izuku, he would say before pulling Izuku out of the USJ, as police officers would then rush into the building, as they would then just tie up all of the villains. All Might would then put Izuku into Nezu's office, as guards would end up coming in, putting quirk-canceling handcuffs onto Izuku before putting him into a quirk-canceling interrogation room, as Nezu didn't want to risk anything. Izuku, I want to ask you a question. How did you know that there was going to be a villain attack at the USJ? Oh, you know about One for All, don't you, Nezu? Yes, of course I do, and I know you know about it too. And you've said you're the ninth successor of that, but All Might hasn't found one yet. Yes, well, look at this. I can't really never believed I've shown you before, but I guess this can just act as proof. Izuku would use One for All, as Nezu would then nod his head. So I guess you really weren't lying. But that doesn't explain how you knew there was going to be a villain attack. Do you mind explaining it to me, Izuku? Because it appears I'm just being a bit dull right now, aren't I? Oh, well, I have another quirk called Danger Sense. I can sense when there's about to be danger. It's kind of hard to explain. I sensed that there was about to be just villains there, so I told Aizawa to just take all of my other classmates and leave. That explains some of it, I guess. But why were you yelling at All Might that you wanted to defeat that villain? He told me how All Might's decision to save you just cost him thousands of lives. Was that some sort of threat, Izuku? If so, I'm gonna have to take it seriously, you know. No, Nezu, it wasn't a threat. Just like I told the All Might, you don't understand it now, but you will later. I just don't want to explain it now. But that Shigaraki there, he's probably one of the world's greatest, just, threats. So, yeah, simple as that. Fine. Classes will resume tomorrow, and you will have the UA Sports Festival in just about a week, Sue would say before dismissing Izuku, as a week would end up passing as we see Izuku walking into class. Good morning, class, Aizawa would sigh. As you all know, today is the UA Sports Festival, so why don't we all begin? So, now just go down to the bus bay, I'll lead you there, yada yada yada. Then you're going to be dropped off at the Class 1A waiting room / locker room. Just get changed and then go into the waiting room. Wait for them to call you out there, and then the rest will just be explained to you later. So I will slowly explain in a sad, depressing voice. As we cut forward to see all of the students now onto a bus, as we see Yuasui walk up to Izuku. Hey, Izuku, do you mind telling us what your quirk is? you've used multiple, and I'm kind of just confused, really. Oh, my quirk. It's really hard to explain, but it's like I can have multiple quirks at one time, but the quirk just disappears if I don't use it enough. It's just really strange and really powerful. It really just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Izuku would, as Asui would kind of nod her head like, okay, sure. I guess I'll believe that. So as the bus would pull up to the Coliseum, they would then go into the locker rooms, getting changed before now being out into the waiting room. As they would all be sitting there, we now see all of them sitting as the doors would open. And now, welcoming your Class 1A, Midnight would announce over the speakers, as the crowd would then erupt into cheers. The building looked as if it was shaking, as all of them would walk out, and as soon as the first one stepped foot onto the grass, the crowd would erupt into 2 times the amount of cheers and just twice as loud. As they would all be standing there, Midnight would then start to laugh. Well, now that all of the classes are out, let the UA Sports Festival now begin! She would exclaim, as all the crowd would start to cheer in excitement. So, let's begin with the first event, a race. There's going to be 3 or 4 obstacles. I don't know. So, why don't you all go into that hallway there, and that will be the starting line, she would say. So all of them now in the hallway would be sitting there as Izuku would use his quirk to float over everyone and to get into the front. As the doors would open, much like they just had for the waiting rooms, Izuku would explode off using One for All along with Float to fly, flying right through just the 0 pointer, as the metal had been made significantly weaker on it so that it didn't hurt any of the general studies classes or students. So as Izuku seeing this, he would fly right through the head of the 0 pointer with such ease, flying over the second obstacle and then the minefield, landing right down before walking right in to the Coliseum. And there's Izuku Midoriya coming in first, setting a new UA record at just 5 minutes, she would say, as 10 more minutes would pass before Bakugo, having exploded through the 0 pointer and basically just flown over the other 2, much like Izuku, just gone, as Todoroki coming in not so behind in third, as Izuku's class and some other kids would end up passing as well. And now that the first event is just closed, let the second event go underway. This will be a cavalry battle of teams of 4. I'll give all of you 5 minutes to decide your teams, Midnight would say, making it obvious that she didn't want to bring all of the details up just yet, as it would severely limit the team-making aspect of it. So, as it would just go around getting their teams, Izuku would get a team of Ochako Uraraka, Tenya Ida, and Shoto Todoroki, making sure that he got quite the strong team, as Uraraka would join him because how many times he saved her and just because he is reliable. Ida would do that mainly because Uraraka, Ida, and Izuku are quite good friends, and Todoroki would be there just because Izuku asked him first. So with that, our teams would be made, as Midnight would then step up, saying that the 5 minutes were now over. However, she had given them all of the details, she would say with a grim look. So, the person in first place happens to have 10 million points, second has 500, and third 250, and on this board you'll see the rest of the scaling there. The higher the place, the just higher the points, she would say, as all of them would now glare on at Izuku's team, as Uraraka and Ida would, or just Ida would say, this was a bad idea, joining your team. Sorry, Izuku, I just don't mean to be rude. As they would all get into formation as the match would then begin, as many of the people would rush off, going right on towards Izuku's team right off the bat because of Izuku's 10 million points. However, utilizing Float, he would fly up into the air as his danger sense would kick in, dodging some attacks from behind and allowing him to dodge or attacks, sensing where they were coming from. As this would be happening, Izuku would end up looking up at the timer, seeing that 20 minutes had passed. However, not 20 minutes, but 5 minutes had passed. All of a sudden, Izuku, sensing something, would end up ducking before lifting up his hand, using One For All, punching the person that was right above him. This happened to be Bakugo Katsuki, as he would be sent flying up, propelling into the air. As all of the crowd would look up at how high this had gone, as Bakugo would then redirect himself with explosions right on towards Izuku. "Damn it, Deku! I told you I'm gonna get that band of yours," he would say, exploding right down, falling down towards Izuku, reaching towards his headband. However, Izuku would twist his body in such a way, slamming his fist into the side of Bakugo's head, sending him flying back into a horde of people. As all of the people would end up falling down, Izuku would float back down towards his team, as they would then just start to avoid everyone else. And sure enough, Izuku's team would end up getting first place with the highest amount of points ever once again, with just around 10,001,000 points. So, as a waiting period would end up finishing, giving all of the students time to rest, Izuku would be told that he's the first person, or just going to be up against Shinso in the first match of the 1v1 tournament. As Midnight would walk up to the stand before saying, "And now, Izuku Midoriya versus Shinso. Let the round now begin!" And that is where part 2 of What If Manga Deku was sent back in time comes to an end. I hope you all did enjoy it, and if you did, please consider subscribing, as it really does help this channel out, and you can even be notified when the other parts of this series do end up coming out. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.